So when I first get contact with a prospective injury client, the first thing I do and consider are the non-economic damages that the person has suffered. So non-economic damages are things like they're intangible things, like the loss of the ability to use a limb or walk or enjoy hobbies, enjoy companionship with another person. These things are very difficult to measure from a dollar perspective, but they are the most important part of an injury case every time. The way that an insurance company will frame what a person has lost, say for example, if they lost the ability to use their legs and now they're in a wheelchair for the rest of their life, are the lost wages and the medical bills, right? So these two like big categories of how much did the medical bills run and how is the person's ability to earn a living impacted for the rest of their life. And they're two usually pretty significant numbers. I refuse to frame it that way. Those are obviously a part of the pot, but to me, the bigger part of that pot is always how did this person's life change from a human perspective, from the perspective of being able to go garden or go to the gym or go on a run or go hiking or be able to have sex or be able to enjoy and play with their children or be able to have children. Those things are obviously very difficult to put a dollar figure on, but they are the most important thing that person has lost. I think anybody would acknowledge that. The best way to think about it is like, would you trade $1 million for the ability to use your legs? And most people would say no. And then, okay, is it 5 million? I think still most people would say no. Is it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50? Does it have to create generational wealth for you and your kids for 3 generations? Like, what's the number, right? And I think most people would struggle with the answer to that question because everybody wants to be able to use their legs and walk around. From the beginning of a case, the reason that I frame it that way is because I want whoever's on the other side of it to realize like this is what is going to be hammered in the event that it goes to a jury trial. Telling the person's story, like my catchphrase is expect to be heard. And I want people to understand that I'm going to listen to them and they can expect me to hear them. And that their story is going to be told in a way that it's going to be heard by whoever is the arbiter, decision maker of, what the ultimate outcome of the case is, whether it's a jury or an insurance company or some defense counsel or whoever. They're going to hear it. These non-economic damages are something that it's another topic that I think ties back into people who don't ever want to be classified as victims have a very difficult time talking about these kinds of things when it comes to a case like this. Talking about your sex life or talking about your ability to be a mother or a father or a loved one in any capacity. Nobody wants to admit that they've been defeated in some way. Even if they had such a significant injury that they're in a wheelchair. They don't want to admit defeat, which is something that obviously is extremely respectable. They don't want to be robbed of their dignity and have to cry in front of a jury about the fact that they can't walk anymore and be able to play catch with their kid or whatever that happens to look like, make love again, except, that's something that needs to be treated with the respect that it deserves. And finding the right lawyer to tell your story, I think, is the biggest solution to that problem, right? Like somebody that's willing to tell your story in a way that you want it to be told and a way that commands continued respect for that person's life, despite whatever they may have gone through and the life-changing circumstances that happened as a result of the injury. Having the story told in a way that they want it told and having respect for that is a big part of a lawyer's duty if you're working up these kinds of cases. So I think like having a lawyer that knows how to create chaos within an insurance company is also critical to avoiding a jury trial in the first place. And creating chaos within an insurance company it requires hard work and smart work, but it's something that you have to know how to do, how to push those buttons within it. It starts with making it very clear that you're going and willing to take it to a jury trial and, making it clear to the insurance company that you're going to go all the way if they're not willing to accept the terms that you're demanding. Having a lawyer that is willing to do that is a game changer. And if you don't have that and you need to do that in order to get what you need to be compensated, you need to find a new lawyer, period. The way that insurance companies frame injuries and frame the narrative around what the damages are is something that if you don't have the willingness to push back on, they will every time steamroll you. In the same way that any entity with a ton of power will, right? Like whether it's the government or big pharma or whatever, big tobacco in the 90s, like up to the 90s was doing it and taking advantage of everybody. If you don't have the will to push back against the power structures, and they are powerful power structures, if you don't have the will to push back against that, you're going to lose. Finding someone with the will to push back against it is what you need to be successful. There's certain kinds of negligence that are very common that present interesting problems for plaintiffs that have been injured. And I think the best example of that is medical malpractice. So doctors are obviously held in high esteem throughout all of our culture and society. Doctors are put on pedestals for a lot of good reasons, but they often make gigantic, extremely costly mistakes to people's lives when they're putting someone through a procedure, whether it's because they were drunk or absent-minded or tired or whatever. We're talking about human beings that are applying the principles which they've learned to care for patients, and oftentimes there's human error associated with that. So a huge impetus to people being able to recover money is just the way that doctors are looked at, right? And for good reason. Like we would hope that every doctor is going to have the kind of integrity to take responsibility for a mistake. But the reality is a lot of doctors have giant egos, just like lawyers do, or any profession that has, an estimable association, like where it's very important to have integrity. It's very important to have honesty and all these things. When that gets challenged, oftentimes there's a really negative and strong reaction from the doctor themselves, and they don't want to be challenged. And that's understandable too, but everybody's human. Owning the mistakes of your humanity, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a giant corporation, whether you're the government, whatever it happens to be, is more important than your average person. Like owning that mistake. It's easier to own a mistake if you're just an average person, because what are the consequences, right? If you have a lot to lose, you're going to fight against ownership of that responsibility for the harm that you caused, probably more so than you would if you're your average person, which is unfortunate, because leading by example by accepting responsibility is something that would make the world a better place ultimately, but oftentimes is not the case. So again, like having a lawyer that's willing to fight against that and expose the mistake or expose the negligence or expose the problem, and having you got to have a certain amount of courage if you're in this line of work to push back against these kinds of power structures and these kinds of just the way that people understand a doctor or the government or a gigantic company that has a good reputation or whatever it happens to be. You have to have the courage to really stick your nose in there and get dirty and expose their mistakes, even if at first you kind of look like an idiot, because they have such a tremendous amount of respect, whoever they happen to be, right? But if it is what it is, and this person is responsible for something that caused a significant amount of harm to somebody else, it's your duty to expose it for what it is and have the other person take accountability for it.